So obviously the topic is what to do with all those leftovers. So whether it be you still have leftovers from the Feast of Tabernacles, if you do the feast, like, because I had, a lot, because I did turkey for that too. I just put a lot of that directly in the freezer, but and then we went ahead and did Thanksgiving, but had a real small group here, even though I did a whole big turkey and tons of mashed potatoes. But that's okay. I like having extra leftovers so I can put it up in some form. So some ideas, I did look up some ideas because I always tend to do, I don't know about you guys, but I always tend to do the same things over and over. And then sometimes forget about things that I've done before that I'm like, oh yeah, there's an idea. So here's what I'm going to do tonight, actually, is I thought about doing it the other night, but I decided to wait till tonight. And I'm going to take some of the leftover turkey I stuck directly in the freezer to dehydrate or use later. And I'll talk about dehydrating again in a minute. But tonight, I'm going to use the leftover mashed potatoes. And then I'm going to take some of the leftover gravy and I'm going to saute some using the gravy. I'm going to saute up some fresh cabbage and onions in that until it's soft, then throw in the mashed potatoes, put everything together and let it heat, throw in some herbs and spices, garlic and whatever, and some chopped up turkey. And so basically I'm going to make a cold cannon, except with turkey added to it and the gravy, because that'll add more flavor to it too. And then, of course, there's the bone broth, and that's one of my favorite things to do is, after we get all the turkey meat off the bones, then I cook the bones for a couple of days, and then I take that, stick it in the fridge, and this is what I just recently started doing, decided this is the best way to do it. So the fat then sits at the top, and then I can just lift that off and do whatever I want with the fat separately. Then dehydrate the broth. Then I don't have all that fat in the broth. It dehydrates better and cleaner, and it does preserve better even with the vacuum sealing. So so that's what I'm doing there. And then you can use that dehydrated bone broth and whatever, anything, to make soup, to make whatever. I mean, it's ready to go. You can use it in making gravy or sauces or whatnot. The typical thing I do usually the day after Thanksgiving or the day after any day that I decide to cook a big turkey is I'll take some of the excess turkey meat and then make a turkey a la king and serve it over rice. We always just called it turkey gravy and rice. And that was, the kids loved that. They loved the day after Thanksgiving because that's what I would do. They probably liked that better than just, the turkey and the mashed potatoes and all that. Any ideas how to disguise turkey for those who don't like the taste of turkey? Well, and here's something too. There's always these traditions that we feel like we have to stick to. I do turkey because, well, you can get right around this time of year, which works good for Feast of Tabernacles too, is that you can get some good organic turkeys, in the fall. And we like turkey, but I don't like it year round. And I do like using it in leftovers, like the turkey a la king, some other things. I'll get to that. I'll get to what I was going to say there if I don't forget in a minute. But some other things are obviously turkey soup, and there's so many different ways you can make a turkey soup. Turkey pot pie, and also turkey and biscuit pot pie, which is a little different because you got your pot pie with the regular pie crust on the top and the bottom. But the turkey and biscuit or chicken and biscuit pot pie, basically you make your filling and put it in the bottom of the pot, and then of a pot instead of a pie pan. Then you make a biscuit dough, but make it a little wetter than you would if you're going to roll it out. And then just kind of put the biscuit dough all over the top and then bake that. It's a kind of a different twist on a pot pie. So I saw something like, I don't know if it was on Instagram, whatever, where this lady took the mashed potatoes and put like a piece of wax paper or parchment paper inside the pot that she was wanting to make her shepherd's pie in, and then spread mashed potatoes on that and then froze them until she was ready to make the shepherd's pie. and, package it up. And you just take that out, and then you peel it off the wax paper and then set it on top of your filling. Enchiladas. I don't know if I have a video. I think I might have a video in enchiladas. I might. I don't know. I haven't made them in a long time. But you can do the same thing with turkey. Anything you can do with chicken, you can do with turkey. Obviously, we got turkey sandwiches, and that's just the turkey. And then, of course, the mashed potatoes. I mentioned the cold cannon, and then the shepherd's pie. And so those are just a couple of ideas with that. And then the bone broth. Now let me go back to what I was saying about traditions. There's nothing that says you have to have turkey for Thanksgiving. You can make whatever you want. I mean, I think a lot of times we stick to traditions because we think that's what our family is going to expect. But you know what? Why not why not throw your own twist into it? Make your own thing. Make whatever sounds best to you. What does your family really like? One year I made homemade raviolis. Takes a lot longer than stuffing a turkey and sticking it in the oven, but that's something that's different. There's no sense in baking up turkeys if you don't like turkey leftovers. I'm going to make up a big turkey because not only can I send some of the meat home with a couple of my kids so they can do stuff with it, then I can take the leftovers and make some fun things with that as well. So, yeah, and like I said, with the turkey soups, there's so many ways you can go with it. Turkey and dumpling, turkey noodle, turkey vegetable. You can make like a gumbo and use turkey instead of some kind of shellfish. So what does Deb say here? I cook extra stuffing in a bread pan. Next day, slice it, bread it, and fry it, and use it as a base for open-faced turkey gravy and mashed potatoes. Ooh, that sounds good. That sounds yummy. And then I saw something where somebody made basically like meatballs. I don't know how they did the turkey, how they would have ground up. I've never tried grinding up cooked meat, but mixing it with the stuffing and then basically made meatballs. Oh yeah, and then turkey and pasta casseroles. So you think there's so many different great pasta casseroles that have chicken in them or fish or something. Just make it with turkey instead. And I know that turkey isn't as good in some things as maybe chicken or beef, but there's plenty enough that turkey is good. And that's why, chicken or turkey Alfredo. I always say fettuccine, but fettuccine is a noodle, but the Alfredo is the sauce. So make like an Alfredo sauce and put your turkey in there and then pour that over some pasta. Turkey chow mein. Thank you, Trina. That's another one. I like using leftover meats to do a lot of, well, usually it's a fried rice, but chow mein to me is very, very similar, just using noodles instead. Because when I make fried rice, it's not just fried rice. It's hearty. It's got lots of meat and vegetables in it. So yeah, all kinds of different sandwiches. One of the things I was thinking is like a turkey salad sandwich. Because sometimes I used to do this a lot, especially when we go camping. I'd make a big thing of chicken salad sandwich spread and take that with us. And that would be a good lunch that we could have. And we're happy to eat that almost every day. But you can do that with, if you like that kind of sandwich, you can do that with turkey. So, again, coming back to this idea of why does it always have to be turkey? I mean, if you don't want turkey, and I would say poll your family and say, do you guys really, really like turkey? Would you like me to do something different next year? Something entirely different? And just see what they say. And you might find that, a wonderful beef roast might be a better idea. I tend to prefer beef roast over chicken or turkey any day, but I do like to change things up every so often. And that's why I like this time of year when I can cook up a couple of turkeys and then also have the leftovers to use however I want. So let's talk about the dehydrating of the meat. So with any meat, really, there's Now, if you want it to be jerky, you just dehydrate it. You can have it cooked and dehydrated, or you can have it raw and dehydrate it. But it cooks while it's dehydrating if you do it at a high heat. So whenever I make jerky, if you saw that video, which was an old video from several years back that I remastered, that came out this last week on Wednesday. And I was showing 2 different recipes of making jerky, and I just made another batch recently, and oh, so good. I like doing it this time of year when we got a fire going because I like doing it on top of the wood stove, because then it's cooking it and drying it at the same time. It actually makes the house smell really nice. But that's going to be chewy. Jerky is chewy. Now, if you want it crispy so you can much more easily use it for, maybe I don't want to keep all that turkey in the freezer because it's taking up space. I could can it, but if I want to put it in a form where it's going to take up the least amount of space, I can dehydrate it. Well, now that it's already been frozen, the freezing process does something to that meat. I think it has to do with maybe, same idea like when you're freeze drying, the ice crystals that form on the inside that really break down that meat. It doesn't matter what kind of meat it is. Chicken, turkey, beef, whatever. And then you take that out of the freezer. So it's cooked first, then you freeze it. Then you take it out and you just let it thaw enough to spread out on your drying trays, and then dehydrate it, and it will turn out crispy. You can just crunch it in your hands like this. And that means it's going to rehydrate much easier. So I've done this with a few things where I've used like the dehydrated turkey, dehydrated salmon, and some dehydrated beef, and made casseroles and soups and whatnot out of those, especially if you're going to use it in casseroles, because soups you can cook for a long time, and whatever's dehydrated in there will rehydrate easier if it's something you can cook for a while. But when I'm making like a gravy and I'm wanting the meat in the gravy, well, the cooked, frozen, then dehydrated meat is excellent. And if you want to, you can even powder it up really easy at that point. Now, the same thing happens with meat that's been pressure canned. It's the same exact thing. So the salmon, I didn't actually freeze it after cooking it. In fact, I didn't cook it at all. We had a whole bunch of salmon from a trip Patrick and his dad did, a fishing trip. And we ended up coming home with all the salmon that they caught because his dad didn't want it all because he knew he couldn't eat all that. And so I canned almost all of it up, and I'm still working through that. Well, I decided to take one of those jars and dehydrate it up and see how it would turn out. And it turns out same. It's just nice and crisp. And I've done that with beef that I've canned in the past. But whenever I can meats, I do a raw pack, and then I pressure can them. And so it cooks them and all that. But the pressure canning does the same thing, or pressure cooking does the same thing as freezing it after it's cooked. So yeah, and it makes a massive difference. But so I say this one a lot because some people who think that, well, you can't dehydrate meat without a freeze dryer. Well, that's just simply not true. People have been dehydrating meat for centuries, for thousands of years. But to get that crispy kind of thing is, I think, what people are talking about, that will rehydrate easy and it's not just a chewy meat. You can still do it without a freeze dryer. You can just use your freezer and then your dehydrator, or even your wood stove to dehydrate it. I haven't tried, even though I've made jerky using my wood stove, I haven't tried drying meat that I've frozen or canned, and then I should do that at some point. You can also dehydrate the turkey carcass after you make the broth. Yes, I've almost thought about doing that this year and make a bone meal. You know what I do though? I just end up burning. I just throw the bones in the wood stove, and then those ashes end up in the garden anyway. So yeah, they're still getting in there somehow. You can look online and find all kinds of great recipes. I just like basic ideas, like soup. Okay, what kind of soup? Let's see. What kind of soup do I want to make? I'll make a turkey soup. I'll make this one like an Italian soup. And I'll make this one like a whatever, whatever flavors you want. Oh, that's what I was going to say. You can dehydrate your leftover mashed potatoes too. And I have a video on that. And so I've used my dehydrated mashed potatoes to make cold cannon before, and also some dehydrated bone broth just to add flavor. But I haven't used a turkey meat in there, so this will be a new thing to try. And then turkey tacos. There's another good one. Just like the turkey enchiladas, they could be regular enchiladas with a red sauce, or they could be the creamy ones where like the you make like your own white sauce and you put your whatever meat in there you're gonna put in there and your cheese and then your Mexican spices. So let me get back to a question I meant to answer earlier. Somebody asked me, how do you dehydrate without electric dehydrators? Well, there's a ton of different ways that you can dehydrate without electric dehydrators. And I get that because, in fact, I have a video out there that you can look for, and it's called Various Ways for Dehydrating, I think is what it's called. I did several years ago, where I just cover many different ideas. A lot of them are non electric ways that, so you're not even having to pay for electricity. And that can be just drying outside if you don't have high humidity. A lot of people talk about dehydrating in a car, but somebody brought up the idea that all this stuff when a car gets hot and all the off gassing that goes on. I thought that was an interesting point that do you want all that plastic and plastic fibers and all that stuff that's off gassing when the car gets hot? I mean, obviously you put the windows down a little bit too, but it's the heat, but you also want airflow. But anyway, the first thing I ever dehydrated actually was jerky. It was elk jerky, or no, it was venison jerky, because Patrick had got a deer that year, and I decided to take some of that meat and make, for the first time ever, make some jerky. Didn't have a dehydrator, but I did an oven. I didn't have, we didn't have the type of wood stove we have now, nor the dehydrating racks that Patrick had made for him. But so I wouldn't have been able to use my wood stove because it was an insert and there's no place to set anything. Some of them have like a nice little shelf, but most of them, like ours, didn't have that. We didn't have any kind of shelf, any place to set stuff on to heat it. So I use the oven, and I don't even know where I found the instructions to that. But yeah, I just used my oven. Maybe I found it in an old cookbook. And you just put them, I just put the pieces of meat on a cookie sheet. Maybe I used like a cooling rack on the cookie sheet. I don't remember. So it was lifted off the cookie sheet, but I thought I put them right on the baking sheet and then stuck it in the oven at the lowest setting that I had. And then somehow I was able to crack the door open. The oven I have now doesn't, you can't just crack it open and have it stay open. But the old one I had, you could just open it a little bit like that far, and it would stay like that. And then that way there could be airflow, so the moisture could escape and not stay inside the oven. And then it would dry the meat out, and then just check it every hour. That was the first way I ever dehydrated meat, made jerky. It was in the oven. It was easy. You don't have to have a dehydrator. In fact, I've never made jerky in my dehydrator. I've always done it now on the wood stove like I did the other day. That's why I usually only do that kind of thing in the wintertime. Yeah, CTM says I used to dehydrate jerky in my oven, and I liked it better than my dehydrator. Yeah, I'd say in the oven and on top of the wood stove probably tastes very similar. I know this last batch I made turned out super, super good. But I'm going to be doing lots more of that, and then start vacuum sealing it and putting it up. And that way, it just seems like there's always some reason Patrick needs to, like if he's going up the mountain to work on the property, which is what he's doing today, or like last weekend when he was gone, he actually had driven, I didn't say all this in my live show, to the complete other side of the state. It's about as far away from Forks as you can get and still be in Washington State. But he drove a long way to go help this lady move. And anyway, I like to have stuff like that on hand for when, before it was, he was going down to California quite a bit to help his dad. And I like to have stuff like that where he can have snacks on the road that are somewhat healthy. So, my new gas oven has a dehydrator setting. Very cool, Mary. I need to experiment with dehydrating more. And that's the thing, is it just when you experiment, it's kind of fun. And you can just do little tiny bits. I think sometimes we get this idea like when we're canning stuff or we dehydrating stuff, we have to do a lot of whatever it is. But if you've never tried it and don't know what it's going to taste like, that's always the worst way to go about it. I've made that mistake before in a few things. So if you're already dehydrating something, like, I'm going to be probably today or tomorrow, I'll run the dehydrator for the broth. The bone broth. And if I've got room in there, I can stick something else in there that maybe I want to sample. And it just has to be a tiny bit. That's all you need. And then see what you think about it. Not just how it tastes coming out of there, but then if it's something like I did with the chicken vegetable soup that I'd canned up a few years back, thought I'd dehydrate one of those jars while I was dehydrating some chicken bone broth. And then took some of that out, mixed it up with some water and cooked it. And I was like, wow, this is great. This is so easy. But I wasn't going to do like a whole dehydrator full of the soup until I tried it first. And then also tried it after it was cooked and make sure it's going to cook up okay. Because some things can dehydrate beautifully, but taste terrible, like avocado. And, avocado will dehydrate up beautifully. It'll powder up beautifully, but it will taste yucky. So don't do a bunch of avocado until you try a tiny bit of it first. Oh, the green beans was the other thing. I decided last year to dehydrate up all my green beans from the garden instead of canning them. I wish I would have never done that because I knew I liked using the dried green beans in soup. And I'm like, I'll find other ways to use them. I only like them in soup. I only like the dehydrated green beans in soup. They're also okay to snack on straight from the jar. But since I don't add a lot of flavor to it, I just dehydrate the beans. They're kind of boring, but not for anything else. So I really wish I've tried making side dishes with them, vegetable dishes. No. Thankfully, I had a few years worth of green beans canned up, so I still have a bunch. So I will be good until I get more to can. What I used to do was I used to always freeze my bone broth in jars. And since I don't usually do canning in the wintertime because I do it outside on the deck using a propane thing, my plan is always to take it out of the freezer, let it thaw, and then can it. But then I'd forget. And so I kept having this broth piling up in my freezer. I mean, I'd be using it through the year. I just, take the jars out of the freezer and let them thaw and then use it for soups and stuff. And then even if I would remember come canning time to can it, there wasn't much left in there. There wasn't enough to fill up the canner. Well, this way I just go right to dehydrating and I don't have to worry about it. And it takes up a ton less space, like much less space. I can take like 4 cups of broth and dehydrate it down to less than a pint. So, 4 cups would be a quart. So, half a pint. So it's like just so much less space. And so if it's 8 cups, you're going to be able to fit, which would fill up 2 quart jars or a half-gallon jar. Then you dehydrate it, you're going to be able to fit that easily into a pint jar. So then you can vacuum seal it and store it in your pantry, and you're not even having to take up freezer space, and you don't have as many jars taking up space on your shelves. So it's great. I love it. And then you don't even have to use the whole thing at once. If you just want to use a little bit of it, and then you just vacuum seal it back up and stick it back on your shelf. It's great. I love it. Oh, and anybody who's watching this in the replay or you want to come back, go ahead and put in comments down below, like some of your favorite things. Even if you already put it in the chat, put it in the comments down below too. Some of your favorite things to make with leftover whatever. It doesn't just have to be turkey and mashed potatoes and gravy. It can be leftover cranberry sauce or leftover salmon dip, or because I also made a smoky salmon dip with cream cheese and the home canned salmon. But anyway, or pie. I don't know about you guys, but pie usually becomes breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Anyway, I really need to get going. I'm going to make that cold cannon. I got to edit a video. And oh, that's right. Patrick got the dishes done before he left. I don't have to worry about dishes. I do have to go haul up some more water. So anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed it today. Thanks everyone for being here, for sharing your ideas, for interacting, for supporting me, for being encouraging. I appreciate you all so much. Love you all. God bless. And hopefully we'll see you next week.